What happens when a teacher's attempt to humiliate becomes the very moment that changes everything? In our story today, a talented black student faces public mockery from his biased music teacher, but what follows leaves everyone speechless. Will justice prevail when hidden talents are finally revealed? This powerful story of prejudice, courage, and redemption might just change how you see the world around you. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published new stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. Marcus Johnson clutched his schedule tightly as he navigated the unfamiliar hallways of Westlake High. Third period, Advanced Music with Mr. Whitaker, Room 215. He'd been at 5 schools in the past 3 years due to his dad's touring schedule, and first days never got easier. The bell rang just as Marcus slipped through the door of room 215. 25 pairs of eyes turned to stare at him. "You must be our new addition," said a tall, thin man with graying temples and wire-rimmed glasses. Mr. Whitaker's smile didn't reach his eyes as he glanced at Marcus's hoodie and jeans. "We've already assigned seats according to vocal range. You'll have to wait until I evaluate you." Marcus nodded and moved toward an empty chair in the back. "Not there," Mr. Whitaker snapped. "That's for chorus members. Stand at the front until I determine your capabilities." A few students snickered. A girl with braids and bright eyes shot them a glare before giving Marcus an encouraging smile. "As I was saying before the interruption," Mr. Whitaker continued, "our winter showcase is in 6 weeks. Only students who demonstrate proper classical technique will be featured soloists." His eyes lingered on a group of students in pressed button-downs and khakis before deliberately sliding past Marcus. For the next 40 minutes, Marcus stood while Mr. Whitaker led the class through scales and arpeggios. Despite his discomfort, Marcus's foot tapped along to the rhythm, a habit his father had always encouraged. "Mr. Johnson," Mr. Whitaker called out suddenly. "Is my lesson boring you?" "No, sir." "Then perhaps you could control your fidgeting. This is a music class, not a dance hall." A muscular boy in a Letterman jacket snorted. "Maybe he's more into rap than real music, Mr. W." "That's enough, Trey," Mr. Whitaker replied, though his lips twitched with amusement. "Though I will say this class focuses on the classics, not contemporary alternatives." The girl with braids raised her hand. "Mr. Whitaker, weren't spirituals the foundation for most American music? We learned that in history last year." "Thank you for the input, Zoe, but this isn't a history class," Mr. Whitaker replied coldly. "Now, let's have Mr. Johnson demonstrate his range." Marcus swallowed hard. "I haven't warmed up, neither have most performers when opportunity strikes. Sing the scale, please." Marcus began softly, his voice barely audible. "Projection, Mr. Johnson. We can't hear you in the cheap seats." A flush crept up Marcus's neck as he tried again, hitting a wrong note in his nervousness. Mr. Whitaker sighed dramatically. "Well, I suppose we can put you in the back row of the baritone section. Try not to throw the others off." He made a note in his gradebook. "And please come prepared tomorrow. This isn't a remedial class." When the bell rang, Marcus grabbed his backpack and headed for the door. "Hey, new kid." It was the girl with braids. "I'm Zoe. Don't mind Whitaker. He's like that with everyone who isn't in his precious chamber choir." "Thanks," Marcus mumbled. Seriously, he once made a girl cry because she couldn't sight read a piece he'd written himself. Zoe fell into step beside him. "What's your next class?" "English with Thompson." "Same. I'll show you where it is." As they walked, Trey and his friends passed by. "Yo, Whitaker's got a new charity case," one called out. Zoe rolled her eyes. "Ignore them. They think being in chamber choir makes them music royalty." Marcus nodded silently, his father's advice echoing in his head, "Keep your head down, son. Your music speaks for itself when the time is right." He just wasn't sure if that time would ever come at Westlake High. That evening, Marcus sat at the second-hand upright piano in their small apartment, fingers hovering above the keys. He glanced at his phone, no new messages from Dad. Andre Johnson had been on tour with Celestial Soul for 3 months now, backing up one of R&B's biggest acts. "Are you gonna play or just stare at it?" Jasmine, his 12-year-old sister, plopped down beside him on the bench. Marcus smiled and launched into a complex jazz progression that their father had taught him. His fingers danced across the keys, muscle memory taking over as the day's tension melted away. "I like it when you play," Jasmine said, leaning against his shoulder. "Reminds me of Dad." "Yeah," Marcus replied softly. "Me too." The piano had been their father's parting gift before this tour, so you don't lose your touch while I'm gone. What Andre didn't know was that Marcus had been composing his own pieces for years, secret melodies he'd never shared with anyone. "How was the new school?" Jasmine asked. Marcus's hands stilled. "Same as the others." "That bad?" "The music teacher's a piece of work." Marcus resumed playing, this time a melancholy minor progression. "Thinks he knows what music is worth listening to." His mind flashed back to Mill Creek High last year, where he'd finally gathered the courage to audition for the jazz band. The director had been impressed, until some students complained about that new kid showing off. The bullying that followed had made Marcus withdraw again, just when he was starting to feel like he belonged. "Dad says people who don't get your music just haven't learned how to listen right," Jasmine offered. Marcus smiled. "Yeah, well, Dad's not here, is he?" A knock at the door interrupted them. Mrs. Grady, their neighbor who watched Jasmine after school, poked her head in. "Everything all right? Dinner's ready whenever you two are." "Thanks, Mrs. G." Marcus closed the piano lid. "We'll be right there." Later that night, Marcus pulled out his composition notebook. He flipped through pages of half-finished songs and chord progressions, landing on his newest piece. He hummed the melody softly, imagining how it would sound with proper instrumentation. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Zoe from music class. Got your hashtag from the student directory. Some of us meet in the practice rooms during lunch. No Whitaker, no pressure. Join us tomorrow." Marcus stared at the message. The last time he'd joined a music group outside of class, it had ended with his sheet music torn up and scattered across the locker room. But something about Zoe's straightforward invitation seemed genuine. Maybe Westlake could be different. Maybe. "Thanks for the invite." Marcus returned to his composition, adding a note in the margin, "for when the time is right." By Friday, Marcus had settled into a routine at Westlake High. Ms. Thompson's English class had become a sanctuary. She'd praised his analysis of I, Too, Sing America and recommended books he might enjoy. Coach Wilson had spotted him shooting hoops alone and suggested he try out for the team. Even lunch with Zoe and her friends in practice room C wasn't so bad, though Marcus still declined to play when they took turns on the old upright. Then there was Mr. Whitaker's class. "Posture, Mr. Johnson." The teacher's voice cut through the chorus rehearsal. "You're slouching again. The diaphragm cannot properly support your voice when you stand like you're waiting for a bus." Marcus straightened his spine, ignoring the smirks from Trey and his chamber choir friends. For 3 days straight, Mr. Whitaker had found some reason to single him out: his posture, his enunciation, his supposed inability to follow simple directions. "Perhaps you should demonstrate proper breathing technique for the class," Mr. Whitaker continued, a challenging edge to his voice. "Since you seem to have your own interpretation of how it should be done." Marcus stepped forward reluctantly. "Breathe from the diaphragm, not the chest," he said, demonstrating the deep breath his father had taught him years ago, the foundation of proper vocal control. Mr. Whitaker's eyebrows rose slightly. "Well, at least you've been listening." He turned away dismissively. "Now, the chamber choir will rehearse their showcase piece while the rest of you work on sight reading the new arrangement." As the elite group gathered around the piano, Mr. Whitaker beamed with pride. "This is what dedication sounds like," he announced after they performed a technically perfect but emotionally flat rendition of a classical arrangement. "Sounds boring to me," Marcus muttered under his breath, not intending to be heard. But Zoe, standing beside him, stifled a laugh that caught Mr. Whitaker's attention. "Something amusing about Mozart, Ms. Williams?" Mr. Whitaker's eyes narrowed. "No, sir," Zoe replied quickly. "I believe Mr. Johnson was sharing his critique." The teacher's gaze shifted to Marcus. "Perhaps you'd care to elaborate for the class?" The room fell silent. Marcus felt his heartbeat quicken but met Mr. Whitaker's stare. "I just think they could use more feeling. The notes are right, but the soul is missing." Gasps and whispers erupted among the chamber choir members. Trey stepped forward, face flushed. "Like you could do better." "I didn't say that." "Interesting perspective," Mr. Whitaker said coldly. "Perhaps Mr. Johnson believes classical music should be performed like a nightclub act." "That's not what Your assignment for Monday," Mr. Whitaker continued as if Marcus hadn't spoken, "is to research the historical context of Mozart's Requiem. 3 pages, properly cited. Perhaps then you'll appreciate the precision required for such compositions." After class, Trey cornered Marcus at his locker. "Who do you think you are, criticizing us like that? You've been here what, a week?" Marcus continued organizing his books. "I wasn't criticizing you. I was answering a question. Nobody talks to Mr. W like that. He's got connections to every music program in the state." "Good for him," Marcus replied, closing his locker. Trey stepped closer. "You think you're special because Thompson and Coach like you? Whitaker runs the arts department. One word from him, and any musical future you think you have is done. Is there a problem here?" Coach Wilson's deep voice interrupted. The tall man looked between the boys with concern. "No problem, Coach," Trey backed away. "Just welcoming the new kid." After Trey left, Coach Wilson turned to Marcus. "Everything okay?" Marcus nodded. "Just a misunderstanding. Whitaker giving you trouble?" "I've heard complaints before." "Nothing I can't handle." Coach studied him. "You know, sometimes the biggest talent comes with the biggest target on your back. People don't like what they don't understand." Marcus looked up, surprised. "What makes you think I have talent?" Coach smiled. "The way you listen to music in the gym when you think no one's watching. Your body doesn't move like someone who just enjoys music, it moves like someone who understands it." He patted Marcus's shoulder. "My office is always open if you need to talk." That evening, Marcus found Zoe waiting outside his last class. "Whitaker's planning something," she said without preamble. "I overheard him talking to Trey about making an example on Monday." "What's that supposed to mean?" "I don't know exactly, but he seemed smug about it." Zoe hesitated. "Look, I know you can sing. I heard you in the hallway yesterday when you thought you were alone." Marcus stiffened. "You were spying on me?" "No. I was getting sheet music from my locker after everyone left. You were in the stairwell, that riff you did. It was amazing." "It was nothing." "It wasn't nothing, Marcus. Why are you hiding?" "With a voice like that. Because every time I've shared my music, it's become a weapon for people to use against me," Marcus snapped. "New schools, new bullies, same story. I'm tired of being either the show pony or the target." Zoe was quiet for a moment. "Whitaker's the worst kind of gatekeeper. He thinks music belongs to people who look and sound a certain way." She met his eyes. "But you can't let him win." "Who says I'm playing his game at all?" "The fact that you still show up to his class when you could have dropped it." Zoe smiled knowingly. "You love music too much to walk away from it, even when it hurts." As Marcus watched her leave, his phone buzzed with a text from his dad, "Got a break in the tour. Coming home next weekend. Can't wait to hear what you've been working on, son. Marcus slipped the phone back into his pocket, a knot forming in his stomach. What would his father say when he learned that once again, Marcus was hiding his talent instead of sharing it? The notebook of compositions in his backpack suddenly felt heavier than ever. Monday morning arrived with a sense of foreboding. Marcus had spent the weekend researching Mozart's Requiem, completing the assignment that Mr. Whitaker had specifically targeted him with. As he entered the music room, he noticed the unusual arrangement of chairs, a semicircle facing the piano, with one chair set apart in the center. Mr. Whitaker stood at the front, a thin smile on his face. "Good morning, class. Before we begin our regular practice, I'd like to introduce a new exercise." His eyes found Marcus. In the professional world, performers must be ready at a moment's notice. Today, we'll practice impromptu performances. Zoe shot Marcus a worried glance as they took their seats. "Mr. Johnson," Mr. Whitaker called out. "Since you had such strong opinions about our interpretation last week, perhaps you'd like to go first." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "I turned in the paper you assigned." "This isn't about the paper," Mr. Whitaker interrupted. "This is about practical application. Theory is meaningless without performance." Trey and several chamber choir members smirked as Marcus reluctantly moved to the isolated chair. "You'll be singing Amazing Grace," Mr. Whitaker announced. "A simple folk melody that even beginners should manage." He emphasized the word beginners with barely concealed derision. "I haven't prepared that piece," Marcus said quietly. "That's the point of an impromptu performance," Mr. Whitaker replied, his voice laced with mock patience. "Unless you feel it's beyond your capabilities." The challenge hung in the air. Marcus could feel 25 pairs of eyes on him, some hopeful for his failure, others concerned, most simply curious. Zoe mouthed, "You've got this," from her seat. "I'll need the sheet music," Marcus said, stalling for time. "A musician of your critical standards should surely know Amazing Grace by heart," Mr. Whitaker replied. "First verse only, unaccompanied. The key of C, please." Marcus swallowed hard. He knew the song, who didn't, but performing cold, in front of a hostile audience, was a different matter entirely. He thought of his father's advice: when they try to trip you up, find your center and let the music speak. "Whenever you're ready, Mr. Johnson. We're all waiting." Mr. Whitaker checked his watch meaningfully. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath from his diaphragm. A memory surfaced, his grandmother singing this very hymn at his grandfather's funeral, her voice steady despite her grief. The melody was simple, but the emotion behind it had been profound. "Mr. Johnson, we don't have all day." "I'm ready," Marcus said, opening his eyes. He found a spot on the back wall to focus on, avoiding the expectant stares. As he began to sing, Marcus deliberately kept his voice soft, almost uncertain. He could see Mr. Whitaker's satisfied expression from the corner of his eye. The teacher thought he was witnessing exactly what he'd expected, a mediocre performance from a student he'd deemed unworthy. Then, as Marcus reached the word grace, something shifted. He stopped singing for the teacher, for the class, for anyone but himself. His voice gained strength and clarity with each note, the simple melody transforming in his capable hands. He added subtle embellishments that honored the spiritual roots of the hymn, infusing the standard arrangement with touches of gospel and soul. By the time he reached "I once was lost, but now am found," the atmosphere in the room had changed completely. The smirks had vanished. Even Mr. Whitaker's expression had frozen in place, the satisfied smile replaced by something unreadable. As Marcus finished the verse, letting the final note fade naturally, the room remained utterly silent. The silence that followed Marcus's last note stretched into seconds that felt like minutes. No one moved. No one spoke. Even Mr. Whitaker seemed momentarily frozen, his expression caught between disbelief and something that looked almost like fear. Then, from the back row, a single pair of hands began to clap. It was Zoe, her eyes bright with vindication. One by one, other students joined in until most of the class was applauding, all except Trey and his inner circle, who exchanged uncomfortable glances. That was. Mr. Whitaker finally managed, clearing his throat. That was an interesting interpretation, Mr. Johnson. Thank you, sir, Marcus replied quietly, still coming down from the unexpected vulnerability of the moment. He'd revealed a part of himself he rarely showed to anyone. I said interesting, not exceptional, Mr. Whitaker clarified, regaining his composure. While you have some natural ability, your technique lacks discipline. The unnecessary embellishments detracted from the piece's simplicity. A murmur of disagreement rippled through the class. One girl near the front whispered to her neighbor loud enough for everyone to hear, "Is he serious right now?" Mr. Whitaker's face flushed. Perhaps we should continue with our scheduled rehearsal. Chamber choir, take your positions. As Marcus returned to his seat, students reached out to touch his shoulder or whisper encouragement. Zoe gave him a triumphant smile. "Dude, where did that come from?" a boy named Jordan asked. "You've been holding out on us." "It was just a hymn," Marcus shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. "Just a hymn," another student echoed. "You made Trina cry, and she never cries." A quiet girl with glasses nodded from 2 seats away, dabbing at her eyes. "My grandmother used to sing it like that before she passed. It reminded me of her." At the piano, Mr. Whitaker was having trouble regaining control of the class. "Your attention, please. We have a showcase in 5 weeks and precious little time to prepare." He struck a chord with unnecessary force. The chamber choir assembled, but the usual reverence they inspired was noticeably absent. Students were still glancing at Marcus, their whispers creating a constant undercurrent. "From the top of the Mozart, please," Mr. Whitaker instructed, tapping his baton against the piano with growing irritation. As the elite group began to sing, Marcus noticed something he'd never picked up before, the subtle flaws in their performance. Their technical precision remained impressive, but after his emotional delivery, their lack of connection to the music was painfully obvious. Even Trey seemed to sense it, his confident expression faltering as he glanced repeatedly at Mr. Whitaker. The teacher stopped them midway through. "Focus, please. You're all distracted today." "Sorry, Mr. W," Trey said. "Maybe we could try a different approach. Something with more." He hesitated, glancing at Marcus. "More feeling." Mr. Whitaker's expression darkened. "The arrangement is perfect as written. The issue is your concentration, not the piece." He turned to the rest of the class. "While the chamber choir regroups, I want everyone to work on their sight reading." As they broke into smaller groups, Zoe slid into the seat beside Marcus. "You realize what just happened, right?" "Whitaker's still mad," Marcus replied. "Not just that. You changed something in this room." Zoe gestured subtly toward the chamber choir. "Even they know it. That's why they can't focus, they're questioning everything he's taught them." By the end of class, Mr. Whitaker had regained some semblance of control, but the dynamic had shifted irreversibly. As the bell rang, he called out over the commotion, "Mr. Johnson, a word please." Marcus exchanged glances with Zoe, who mouthed, "I'll wait outside," before leaving with the others. When the room had emptied, Mr. Whitaker remained seated at the piano, his fingers resting on the keys but not playing. "Where did you study voice?" he asked without looking up. "I haven't, formally," Marcus answered. "My father's a musician. I grew up around music." "Your father?" Mr. Whitaker's tone was flat. "And what kind of musician is he?" Marcus felt his shoulders tense. "He plays keys and does arrangements for Celestial Soul." Mr. Whitaker's eyebrows rose slightly. "R&B." He said it like it was a diagnosis. "Yes, sir. And jazz, gospel, sometimes classical when the gig calls for it. He studied at Juilliard before touring." That last detail caught Mr. Whitaker off guard. He looked directly at Marcus for the first time. "Juilliard. He dropped out his third year when his band got signed. Marcus held the teacher's gaze. But he made sure I understood music theory, even when we were moving around. Mr. Whitaker seemed to be reassessing something. Your performance today was technically proficient, despite the stylistic choices. He paused. But this class follows a structured curriculum. I can't have students improvising whenever they feel like it. I understand. Do you? Mr. Whitaker closed the piano lid carefully. Music isn't just about emotional expression, Mr. Johnson. It's about discipline, tradition, respecting the composer's intentions. My dad always says music is conversation, Marcus replied. The composer starts it, but the performer continues it. Otherwise, we might as well just use computers. A muscle twitched in Mr. Whitaker's jaw. You may go. Outside, Zoe was waiting with Jordan and Trina. What did he say? Zoe demanded. Nothing much. Asked about my background. He shook, Jordan grinned. Never seen Whitaker speechless before. Trina nodded enthusiastically. You should join our lunchtime sessions. For real this time, not just sitting there. As they walked to their next classes, word of Marcus's performance spread through the hallways. Students he'd never spoken to nodded or smiled in recognition. A senior wearing a jazz band t-shirt stopped him to ask if he was planning to audition. By the end of the day, the story had grown with each retelling. According to the latest version making the rounds, Marcus had made Mr. Whitaker cry and been offered a solo on the spot. This is exactly what I didn't want, Marcus muttered to Zoe as they dodged curious onlookers after final bell. Too late now, she replied. The Marcus Johnson legend has begun. The next morning, Marcus found a note taped to his locker. He unfolded it cautiously, half expecting some kind of threat after yesterday's confrontation. Instead, he found neat handwriting on music staff paper. The Contemporary Music Club meets Thursdays after school in room 103. No classical required. Ms. Thompson, what's that? Zoe appeared beside him, peering at the note. Apparently my English teacher runs a music club, Marcus replied, surprised. Oh yeah, Thompson's Indie Music Club. They do all kinds of stuff, covers, originals, spoken word with musical backing. Zoe nudged his shoulder. You should go. Maybe, Marcus said noncommittally, tucking the note into his pocket. As they approached the music room, Marcus braced himself for another confrontation with Mr. Whitaker. But when they entered, they found a substitute teacher at the desk. Mr. Whitaker is attending a department meeting today, the elderly woman announced. He's left detailed instructions for your independent practice. The absence of the music teacher created an immediate shift in atmosphere. Students grouped themselves differently, the usual hierarchy temporarily suspended. Even the chamber choir members seemed more relaxed, with Trace sitting on the edge of his chair rather than rigidly upright. During the period, several students approached Marcus with questions or comments about his performance the day before. The attention made him uncomfortable, but it wasn't the hostile scrutiny he'd experienced at previous schools. You know, a chamber choir girl named Ashley told him during group work, I've been taking lessons since I was 5. My parents spend hundreds on private instruction every month. She studied him with genuine curiosity. How do you make it sound so real? I don't know, Marcus admitted. I just feel it, I guess. Whitaker always says feeling comes after perfecting technique, Ashley replied, a hint of doubt in her voice. Maybe it's both, Marcus suggested. My dad says technique is just the vehicle. If you don't know where you're going, having a perfect car doesn't help much. By lunchtime, even more students had heard about Marcus's performance. When he and Zoe entered the cafeteria, a table of band kids waved them over enthusiastically. Is it true you made Whitaker so mad he had to take a mental health day? A trumpet player asked eagerly. What? No, Marcus said. At least, I don't think so. He's definitely avoiding you, Zoe pointed out. Department meetings on a Tuesday? That's not a thing. After school, Marcus found Coach Wilson waiting by his locker. Heard you caused quite a stir in Whitaker's class, the coach said with a knowing smile. It wasn't intentional, Marcus replied. The best disruptions never are. Coach Wilson leaned against the lockers. Thompson told me about the note she left you. The music club could use someone with your ear. I don't know if I'm staying at Westlake long term, Marcus said. My dad's tour schedule, life's short, Marcus. Too short to always be waiting for the perfect moment. Coach Wilson straightened up. You've got a gift. Whether you're here 6 weeks or 6 years, don't waste it hiding. That evening, Marcus sat at the piano again, but this time his sister Jasmine wasn't the only audience. He'd finally called his father back, and Andre Johnson's face watched him from the phone propped against a stack of books. Play me what you've been working on, his father encouraged. That new composition you mentioned. Marcus's fingers hovered over the keys, hesitant despite their familiar weight. Something happened at school, he admitted. The music teacher tried to embarrass me, make me sing in front of everyone. But He trailed off. It backfired, Andre finished, nodding. Let me guess, they weren't expecting what came out of you. Now everyone's acting weird. Wanting to be friends, asking questions. Andre's expression softened with understanding. The spotlight found you, huh? Even when you were trying to stay in the shadows. I don't want to be the center of attention, Marcus said quietly. Not again. I know, son. Andre sighed. After what happened at Mill Creek. But hiding your light doesn't dim anyone else's. It just leaves the world a little darker. Marcus began to play, his original composition flowing from memory. It was a complex piece that moved between classical structure and jazz improvisation, reflecting the different parts of his musical education. That's beautiful, Andre said when Marcus finished. When did you add that bridge section? Last week, Marcus admitted. After a bad day with Whitaker. You've always done that, channeled everything into your music. Even as a little kid. Andre smiled. Your mother was the same way. They talked for another half hour, about music, school, and Andre's upcoming visit. When they hung up, Marcus felt lighter than he had in weeks. His phone buzzed with a group text from Zoe, rumor alert. Whitaker is adding a contemporary piece to the showcase. Something about showcasing diverse musical traditions. What did you do to him? Marcus stared at the message, then slowly smiled. Maybe the spotlight wasn't so bad after all, if it helped illuminate more than just him. By Thursday afternoon, the initial shock of Marcus's performance had evolved into something more complex. As he entered room 103 for Ms. Thompson's Contemporary Music Club, he found a surprisingly diverse group of students, some he recognized from orchestra, others from jazz band, and a few who didn't seem connected to music programs at all. Marcus. You came. Ms. Thompson's genuine excitement made him feel welcome immediately. Unlike Mr. Whitaker's formal classroom setup, this space was arranged in a casual circle with various instruments scattered around. I wasn't sure what to expect, Marcus admitted, taking a seat next to a girl with a guitar. That's the beauty of this club, Ms. Thompson smiled. No expectations, just exploration. We're working on original compositions for the Spring Arts Festival. For the next hour, Marcus listened as students shared works in progress and received supportive feedback. When Ms. Thompson asked if he wanted to share something, he surprised himself by nodding. I don't have anything prepared, but I could improvise. The floor is yours, she gestured to the upright piano in the corner. This time, when Marcus sat down to play, there was no anxiety, no feeling of being judged. He let his fingers find a melody he'd been working on, something that blended classical structure with jazz harmonies. The room fell silent as he played, adding layers and complexity as he went. When he finished, the applause was immediate and enthusiastic. That was original? A senior named Leo asked incredulously. Dude, that should be in the showcase. Speaking of which, Ms. Thompson interjected, I heard Mr. Whitaker is considering some program changes. Because of Marcus, a girl named Danny added. My sister's in chamber choir. She said Whitaker's been weird since Monday, making them try different interpretations, talking about emotional authenticity. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I didn't mean to cause trouble. You didn't cause trouble, Ms. Thompson assured him. You caused reflection. That's different. After the meeting, Marcus felt lighter than he had in months. Maybe Westlake could be different from his previous schools. Maybe here, his music could be appreciated without making him a target. That feeling lasted until music class the next morning. Mr. Whitaker was back, but something had changed. His usual crisp demeanor had an edge of agitation. When Marcus entered, the teacher barely acknowledged him. Today we'll be discussing solo opportunities for the showcase, Mr. Whitaker announced. As you know, these are typically reserved for our most technically proficient students. His eyes swept over the chamber choir section. However, this year we'll be including a contemporary piece as well. A ripple of whispers spread through the class. Marcus caught Zoe's eye, she gave him a subtle thumbs up. Auditions will be held next Friday, Mr. Whitaker continued. Prepare a classical piece and, if you wish to be considered for the contemporary solo, a second piece of your choice. He placed a stack of papers on the edge of his desk. Sign-up sheet is here. First come, first served for time slots. The moment he finished speaking, several students rushed toward the desk. Marcus hesitated, unsure whether to join them. Aren't you going to sign up? Zoe whispered. This is your chance. Before Marcus could answer, Mr. Whitaker spoke again. Mr. Johnson, a word after class, please. When the room had emptied, Marcus approached the piano where Mr. Whitaker was organizing sheet music with unusual intensity. You wanted to see me, sir? Yes. Mr. Whitaker didn't look up. Principal Rivera seems quite taken with the idea of showcasing diverse musical styles this year. Apparently, word of your performance reached her office. Marcus stayed silent, sensing the teacher's resentment. I want to be clear about something, Mr. Whitaker finally met his eyes. This is still my program. One emotional rendition of a hymn doesn't change the standards of excellence we've established here. I understand, sir. Do you? Mr. Whitaker's voice hardened. Because several of my most dedicated students seem suddenly distracted by stylistic experiments rather than perfecting their technique. That wasn't my intention. Intentions are irrelevant in music, Mr. Whitaker cut him off. Results are what matter. And if the result of your presence is a degradation of this program's quality, that becomes my concern. He straightened a stack of papers with unnecessary precision. You may audition if you wish, but understand that technical proficiency will still be the primary criterion for selection. Yes, sir, Marcus replied evenly, though his heart was racing. This wasn't just about music anymore, it was personal. By lunchtime, word had spread about Mr. Whitaker's new coldness toward Marcus. When he entered practice room C, Zoe and Jordan were already there, arguing in hushed tones. What's going on? Marcus asked. Whitaker's stacking the deck, Jordan explained. He's having Trey and two other chamber choir kids judge the contemporary auditions with him. Supposedly for their educational benefit. That's straight-up sabotage, Zoe fumed. He knows they'll vote however he wants. Marcus sank onto the piano bench. Maybe I shouldn't bother auditioning. That's exactly what he wants. Zoe exclaimed. Can't you see? He's threatened by you. Your talent exposes the limitations of his teaching. Or maybe he just thinks I'm not good enough, Marcus countered. Not everyone's out to get me, Zoe. But later that afternoon, Marcus learned otherwise. As he was retrieving his composition notebook from his locker, he overheard Trey and two other chamber choir members talking around the corner. Whitaker's freaking out, a girl's voice said. He told us to be especially rigorous with Johnson's audition. Can you blame him? Trey replied. Some random transfer student shows up and suddenly everyone's questioning his methods. I'd be pissed too. I don't know, the third voice hesitated. That performance was pretty amazing. Whose side are you on, Ashley? Trey snapped. Whitaker's the one writing our college recommendations, not some jazz kid who'll probably transfer again before semester's end. Marcus closed his locker quietly and walked away, conflict churning inside him. That night, he stared at the audition sign-up sheet he'd taken, the blank line waiting for his name. His phone buzzed with a message from his dad, 1 week until I'm home. Getting excited to hear your new material. With a deep breath, Marcus picked up his pen and signed his name. He's trying to rig the auditions, Zoe declared the next morning, pacing the empty practice room where she'd asked Marcus to meet her before first period. We need a plan. What kind of plan? Marcus asked warily. Evidence, she replied, her eyes bright with determination. If Whitaker's being unfair, we need to prove it. And how exactly do we do that? Zoe pulled out her phone. We record the auditions. That's your big plan? Pretty sure that's against school rules. Not if we get permission, Zoe grinned. I already talked to Ms. Thompson. She thinks it's a good idea to document the process for educational purposes. She's getting official approval today. Marcus stared at her. You've been busy. Someone has to fight the power, she shrugged. Besides, I'm not the only one. Have you checked your email? Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his inbox to find a message from Leo in Ms. Thompson's music club, CCNG several other students. Hey everyone, I'm organizing a petition to make the showcase selection process more transparent. If you believe all styles of music deserve equal consideration, please sign. Music is universal, it shouldn't be gatekept by one person's taste. Below the message was a link to an online petition that already had 48 signatures. This is getting out of hand, Marcus said, pocketing his phone. I just want to play music, not start a revolution. Too late, Zoe replied. You're already the face of the resistance. Throughout the day, Marcus noticed subtle changes in how people interacted with him. Students he barely knew nodded in recognition. A girl from AP Music Theory asked if he'd consider tutoring her in jazz progressions. Even some of the chamber choir members, not Trey or his closest allies, but others, seemed less standoffish. In English class, Ms. Thompson handed back their essays on the power of voice in literature. At the bottom of Marcus's paper, beneath the A grade, she'd written, your analysis of how marginalized voices transform the literary landscape parallels something happening right here at Westlake. Your voice matters, Marcus. After school, Marcus found Coach Wilson waiting outside the music room. Heard you signed up for auditions, the coach said with approval. Good decision. Not sure it was, Marcus replied. Things are getting complicated. Growth is always complicated, Coach Wilson said. Come with me a minute. He led Marcus to the trophy case in the main hallway, pointing to a faded photograph of a jazz ensemble. Westlake's 1978 All-State Jazz Champions, he explained. Know why this trophy's hidden behind the football and basketball ones? Because when Mr. Whitaker took over the music department 10 years ago, he decided jazz wasn't serious music worth showcasing. What happened to the jazz program? Marcus asked. Slowly died out as Whitaker redirected all the resources to classical. The teacher who built it, Mrs. Franklin, left in frustration. Coach Wilson turned to face Marcus directly. She was the first black music teacher at this school, and she built something special here. Something that got dismantled because it didn't fit someone's narrow definition of excellence. Marcus absorbed this information silently, seeing the situation in a new light. You signing up for that audition isn't just about you, Coach continued. It's about all the students who deserve a chance to be heard in their own musical language. The next day, something unexpected happened. As Marcus entered the cafeteria, Trey approached him, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Can we talk?" he asked, glancing around nervously. "Not here." Curious and cautious, Marcus followed him to an empty stairwell. "I heard something I think you should know," Trey said, keeping his voice low. "Whitaker's already decided who's getting the contemporary solo. Some senior named Eliza who's been taking private lessons with him for years." "So the auditions are just for show?" Marcus asked, unsurprised but still disappointed. "Pretty much." Trey shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I've always followed Whitaker's lead because that's how you succeed in his program. But what you did with that hymn." He hesitated. "It made me remember why I started singing in the first place." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because it's not right," Trey said simply. "And I'm not the only one who thinks so. Half the chamber choir feels the same way." By Friday morning, the day of auditions, what had started as individual discontent had coalesced into organized resistance. Leo's petition had over 100 signatures. Ms. Thompson had secured permission to record the auditions for archival purposes. And perhaps most surprisingly, Trey and several other chamber choir members had begun quietly distancing themselves from Mr. Whitaker's inner circle. As Marcus warmed up in practice room C, running through scales and preparing his pieces, Zoe burst in with excitement. "You won't believe who just showed up," she grinned. "Who?" "Principal Rivera. She's sitting in on the auditions." The audition room fell silent as Marcus entered. 5 people sat at a long table, Mr. Whitaker in the center, flanked by 2 chamber choir students, Principal Rivera, and, to Marcus's surprise, Ms. Thompson. "Mr. Johnson," Principal Rivera smiled warmly. "We're looking forward to your performance." Mr. Whitaker's expression remained neutral, though Marcus noticed a muscle twitching in his jaw. "You've prepared both a classical piece and a contemporary piece." "Yes, sir." Marcus placed his sheet music on the piano. Bach's Prelude in C minor for the classical, and an original composition for the contemporary. "Original?" Mr. Whitaker's eyebrows rose. "The guidelines didn't specify original compositions." "They didn't prohibit them either," Ms. Thompson interjected smoothly. "Creativity should be encouraged, don't you think?" Principal Rivera nodded in agreement. "I'm quite interested to hear an original piece." Marcus sat at the piano, forcing himself to breathe deeply. The Bach Prelude came first, a piece he'd practiced meticulously, knowing Mr. Whitaker would be listening for technical flaws. His fingers moved with precision, every note clear and deliberate. When he finished, there was polite applause from the panel. "Very competent," Mr. Whitaker said, making a note on his clipboard. "Though perhaps lacking the emotional depth the piece demands." Principal Rivera frowned slightly at this comment but said nothing. "And now your contemporary piece," Mr. Whitaker continued, his tone suggesting he was merely enduring this portion. Marcus repositioned himself at the piano, closing his eyes briefly before beginning. The composition he'd chosen was the one he'd been working on for months, a piece that blended classical structure with jazz harmonies and gospel-influenced melodies. It was technically challenging but emotionally rich, telling the story of his family's musical journey across generations. As he played, Marcus lost himself in the music, forgetting the judges, the politics, the tension of the past weeks. His fingers created something bigger than himself, bigger than Westlake, bigger than Mr. Whitaker's narrow definitions of excellence. When the final chord faded, the room remained silent for a long moment. Then Principal Rivera began applauding, followed quickly by Ms. Thompson and one of the student judges. Even Trey, who was supposed to be impartial, gave a slight nod of acknowledgement. Only Mr. Whitaker remained stone-faced. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We'll be in touch with all applicants by Monday." As Marcus gathered his sheet music, Principal Rivera spoke up. "Before you go, Marcus, I'd be interested to know the story behind your composition. It felt very personal." Marcus hesitated, aware of Mr. Whitaker's growing impatience. "It's called Crossroads. It's about how different musical traditions intersect in my family," from my great-grandmother who sang spirituals in church, to my grandfather who played jazz during the Harlem Renaissance, to my father who studied classical piano before becoming a session musician. Fascinating, Principal Rivera said. Music as cultural heritage. That's precisely the kind of perspective we need in our arts programs. The pointed comment wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Mr. Whitaker's expression hardened further. "Thank you for your time," Marcus said, excusing himself from what was clearly becoming a tense situation. Outside, Zoe and a crowd of supporters were waiting. "How'd it go?" she demanded. "I played my best," Marcus replied simply. "Now we wait." But they didn't have to wait long. By the end of the school day, news was spreading that Principal Rivera and Mr. Whitaker had been seen in a heated discussion in the administrative offices. Rumors flew about raised voices and phrases like systematic exclusion and outdated mentality. That evening, as Marcus was helping Jasmine with her homework, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Hello? Marcus? This is Mrs. Bennett, the school counselor." Her voice was warm but concerned. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "No, it's fine," Marcus replied, curious about the unexpected call. "I wanted to let you know that there's been a situation regarding the showcase auditions," she explained. "Principal Rivera has called a special meeting on Monday morning with Mr. Whitaker, Ms. Thompson, and several other faculty members. She's asked if you would be willing to attend as well." "Me? Why?" "I believe she wants to address some concerns about the music program selection process and overall direction," Mrs. Bennett said carefully. "Your perspective would be valuable." After hanging up, Marcus sat at the piano, his fingers hovering over the keys without playing. The situation had escalated far beyond what he'd intended. He'd just wanted to make music, to express himself in the language that felt most natural. Instead, he'd become the catalyst for a confrontation that could reshape Westlake's entire music program. His phone buzzed with a text from Zoe, "Just heard about Monday's meeting. Whitaker's on the warpath. Claims you've turned students against him. You need backup. We're organizing." Before he could reply, another message came through, this one from Trey, "Heads up. Whitaker called emergency chamber choir meeting tonight. Trying to get us to sign statements supporting him. Some refusing. Things getting ugly." Then a third message arrived, from an unknown number. "Marcus, this is Ashley from Chamber Choir. Just want you to know several of us are standing with you. Your music today was beautiful. This isn't about taking sides, it's about making room for everyone's voice." Finally, as if the universe was orchestrating a perfect crescendo, a call came through from his father. "Dad?" Marcus answered, his voice thick with emotion. "Hey, son. Just landed at the airport, earlier flight than planned." "Surprise." Andre Johnson's voice was bright with excitement. "Everything okay? You sound stressed." "It's complicated," Marcus admitted. "Remember how you always said music speaks for itself when the time is right?" "Of course. I think that time might be tomorrow morning." #Rude teacher forces black student to sing a song to mock him but his talent leaves the class speechless. Monday morning arrived with the weight of anticipation. Word had spread throughout Westlake High about the special meeting in Principal Rivera's office. As Marcus approached the administration building, students whispered encouragement. Some he barely knew offered fist bumps or supportive nods. "You've got this," Zoe said, walking beside him. "Just speak your truth." Marcus nodded, throat tight with anxiety. The last person he expected to see waiting outside the principal's office was his father, dressed in a crisp button-down and slacks. "Dad?" Marcus stopped short. "I thought you weren't coming until tonight." Andre Johnson embraced his son. "Mrs. Bennett called. Said my son was making waves." His smile was proud. "Couldn't miss this." Inside, the tension was palpable. Mr. Whitaker sat rigidly on one side of the conference table, a folder of documents before him. Ms. Thompson, Mrs. Bennett, and Coach Wilson occupied the other side. Principal Rivera sat at the head, her expression serious but kind. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "I've called this meeting because it's become clear our music program needs reassessment." Mr. Whitaker straightened. "Principal Rivera, my program has produced award-winning performances for 10 years. For some students," Principal Rivera countered gently. "But music education should serve all students, not just those who fit a particular mold." For the next 30 minutes, a frank discussion unfolded. Ms. Thompson spoke of diverse musical traditions deserving equal respect. Coach Wilson recounted Westlake's once thriving jazz program that had been dismantled. Mr. Whitaker defended his standards of excellence with increasing defensiveness. Finally, Principal Rivera turned to Marcus. "You've been at the center of this. What would you like to say?" Marcus felt every eye on him. He took a deep breath, remembering his father's words, "Music speaks for itself when the time is right." "I just wanted to make music," he said simply. "Music that honors where I come from while still reaching for something new. I never meant to challenge anyone, I just wanted to be heard." Andre placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "That's all any artist wants." Principal Rivera nodded thoughtfully. "Mr. Whitaker, your technical expertise is valuable. But a truly excellent program embraces diverse traditions and voices." Her decision was firm. The showcase would include both classical and contemporary pieces, judged by a diverse panel with transparent criteria. Furthermore, she added, "We'll be reviving Westlake's jazz program next semester, with Ms. Thompson leading and community musicians." She nodded at Andre, providing guidance. As the meeting ended, Mr. Whitaker approached Marcus stiffly. "Your Bach was technically proficient," he admitted. "With proper training, you could develop a respectable classical repertoire." It wasn't an apology, but it was a beginning. 6 weeks later, the winter showcase made history. The chamber choir performed their Mozart with newfound emotional depth. Marcus's original composition, Crossroads, brought the audience to their feet, with his father joining on saxophone. Afterward, Mr. Whitaker found Marcus alone at the piano. "Your counterpoint is improving," he said quietly. "Thank you, sir. I practice every day." The teacher nodded, hesitating before adding, "Perhaps music is, as you said, a conversation. And perhaps I've been speaking without listening for too long." As he walked away, Marcus played a gentle melody that blended Bach with blues, a bridge between worlds that had seemed so far apart. Music had finally spoken for itself. And this time, everyone was listening. Dear friend, our story reminds us that talent comes in many forms, and true excellence embraces diversity rather than fearing it. Every voice deserves to be heard, especially those that challenge our preconceptions. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content that celebrates triumph over adversity. Together, we can create a world where no one's gifts are dismissed because they don't fit someone else's narrow definition of excellence. Share this message to help ensure that every unique voice has the chance to leave us all speechless with their brilliance.